Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to this Google Hangout. Today, we'll be talking with some industry experts, mainly from myself. I'm from VMware, Palo Alto, and also DD from Novamedia, about software-defined networking, the role it has in security, and how it's important to businesses to really start embracing that. So we'll start with introductions. I'll start with myself, hand the floor over to Dharminder from Novamedia, and then finally we'll hand it off to Chris from Palo Alto. Myself, my name is Jeremy Van Doorn. I've been working with VMware for a number of years, almost 12 at the moment, and currently focusing as the Director of Systems Engineering for Networking and Security in EMEA on our NSX networking and security product. With NSX, obviously, we enable network virtualization and all of the security benefits that add to it. And today we'll be talking a little bit about how that solution adds to the value of security for businesses. Dharminder, could you please explain a little bit about your role and obviously the Novamedia organization?
Yes, my name is Dharminder Debisarun. I'm head of IT from Novamedia. I'm working on 18 years now for Novamedia. Novamedia exists 26 years, and what we do, we are a charity lottery. So 50% of our ticket sales goes to charity. We are one of the third largest in the world. That's the short, briefly introduction.
Great, thank you, Dharminder. Chris, could you explain your role and a little bit about Palo Alto Networks?
Sure. So my name is Chris Morosco. I'm a Director of Marketing for Cloud and Data Center. And Palo Alto Networks is a security company that specializes in cyber attack prevention and data protection within enterprises.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So obviously we'll have a bit of a discussion about how network security needs to change. And I think over the last couple of months, we've all seen how companies sometimes are vulnerable and have been the victim of sometimes malicious attacks, but sometimes just maybe mistakes which lead to data loss or anything else that could be damaging. Today's world is obviously very, very competitive. It really forces companies to push the limits on how flexible their employees can be with data, because they need that flexibility to extend their services to the customers. However, extending those services and embracing that flexibility for employees can sometimes also mean that they need to take, well, calculated risks, or at least enable new functionality for their employees, which could lead to potential risks. So security is very, very important, and it's changing. It's ever more rapidly changing. So if we look into this new world, and Dharminder, I'll ask you this first question first. What do you think the new security challenges are really facing a business, in particular regarding to networking and mobile security, that you see for employees and your entire company?
You know, there are three facts what we have. One is the legislation that is changing, and the second one is that awareness for our own people, and the third one is the denial of service attacks on the networks. If we look at the legislation at this moment, the new legislation for Europe for data breaches, we have to be prepared for this. Otherwise, the penalties are very high. So keeping up that with the business, we are very hard busy with that to prepare everything and to beat the business, beat them, be a step forward, because afterwards it's not going to work. So we are preventing that, looking at awareness, you know, like phishing emails, train your people always, don't click. It's still a big hassle, even with the board of directors. It's so easy for them to click on a URL and it looks like it's phishing. Looking further what the market is doing now, especially for denial of services, let's take our own campaign that we have end of this year, where we are giving 50 million euros away. The whole system is prepared to prevent denial of services. So those are the three big challenges at this moment, looking from the business where we are now in.
Yeah, exactly. And have you seen a lot of change over the last year, where we've seen obviously a lot of data leakage happening with other companies? Have you seen the board of directors change their opinion towards how important security is?
Yes, usually security wasn't even in the top 10 of the board of directors, because security is an insurance policy. If cost is giving nothing back. But looking what legislation is now asking from the business world is they have it on their agenda now. It's even in our top 3 from the board of directors in the agenda for prevent and be sure everything is safe. Of course, you will prevent your crown jewels. You cannot prevent everything. So you have to know your applications. You have to know what's really the heart of your application.
Very good. Chris, obviously you work for one of the leading security companies in the world. You probably talk to a lot of customers. What's your view on sort of the challenges that these new security paradigms will offer or threaten companies for?
Sure. So it's really a kind of a twofold problem, and what we've seen is the migration to virtualization and to cloud is kind of driven a major change in how business is being handled. You see services being brought up much more quickly, changes from a business side being required much more quickly. And what largely happened up till now is that the kind of old security paradigms that we had in the past with physical platforms came with it into the virtual environment. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of the results of what that kind of older model of security has done in the last year with a lot of the breaches that have happened. And so we've started to realize that you have to start looking at security in a slightly different way as you move much more quickly and move into these much more agile environments. And so you have kind of this dual paradigm of move faster but be more secure simultaneously, which is extremely challenging for customers. And fortunately, there's solutions and a way to solve it. We just have to look at it in a slightly different way than we have in the past.
So you're talking about a slightly different way. Obviously, businesses are looking at that. If I could ask you the next question, what do you think in security, what is the #1 priority spend, especially if you look towards networking security? Obviously, we're focusing on that. What do you think is the #1 priority for our customers there?
From a dollar spent or from...
Well, I think both from a knowledge and well, IP type of protection, also to maybe where do they spend the most amount of money and interest and time.
Got it. Yeah, so to kind of echo what Dharminder said, it's really the data, right? The customer's data is the most critical piece. The data is kind of shifting. Like I said, it shifted from physical platforms, it started moving to virtual, it started moving to cloud. The thing that's consistent no matter where that data goes is that it has to be maintained and controlled and protected by the organization. And so it doesn't matter what happens as far as change in the organization goes or how the network's deployed. That data is still that crown jewel, that critical piece that needs to be protected and separated from everything else.
Yeah, and you mentioned a very important point, obviously data shifting from physical to virtual to cloud. Do you see a lot of companies sort of embracing cloud with critical data? Are there good solutions for protecting all of that?
Yes, that's a good question. So it's similar to what we saw when virtualization first happened, right? So when we first saw virtualization come about, we saw very non-critical functions move to virtualization first, to make sure that everything worked properly, and then we would see more critical functions move over time. Now we've seen a lot of the non-critical functions move to cloud. We're starting to see more critical functions move to cloud. An entire business is based around cloud, in fact, and so it's a cheaper and easier way to start off instead of building out whole data centers in some cases.
Right, and Dharminder, for you, obviously you are one of those organizations. For you guys, what was the #1 priority? Why you really decided to invest in security, and what made your board of directors basically care?
You know, it's always about the privacy of the data. What type of data do you really have? And in our case, we have a lot of private data where we have to protect our customers because we have a lot of information about them, and we have to convince of not only the board of directors but also people who are working with the data. You know, this data belongs to somebody and you don't want that data on the street. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as a company, as a lottery company, that's the company is based on trust and security. If the people cannot trust us, we don't have a business. So to protect that and to protect all the reputation that you can have and the damage that can happen, and business can be gone, and all the employees could be out of work. And so that's the case where the board of directors says, okay, no, we have to do really something about this, and this should be always in our priority list. And that's why we're having awareness training as this moment. We are looking for more advanced threat intelligence, looking what we're doing from north to south and from east to west firewalling. Of course, we are also making use of the Palo Alto network security platform, and that's giving us a visibility how who are knocking at our doors. Let's say that, because there are things going on, and you have to prevent them and you have to detect them.
Yeah, fully agreed. So if you think about, in your case, Novamedia, was there a single moment where you could say, yes, the penny really dropped and now everyone really understands that we need to invest? Was there a single moment?
Yeah, there was a moment. What we did is we took our board of directors to our data centers, show them how it looked like, and pick them from that part. You know, you are not only investing in hardware; it's also the intelligence behind it, and then they understand, okay, if this is what you are aiming for, is if this is how you should protect our assets, then you go for it. And the convincing part is not only because it's an investment, it's always an investment, but show them what you are getting back, because security is very hard to show them where you're getting the money back from. So you have always to be prepared to say, okay, if we don't protect this good enough and something happens, the company will be out of business. And then they realize, okay, so we have to put some more attention over there. I said, yes, and how much gonna cost? And it's not only the networking, it's the whole stack of software-defined data center, including with NSX as firewalls, and Palo Alto networking hooking into our environments for the lateral movement based on inspection of the traffic that's flowing through our data centers. And we want to be really in control and get the visibility what's happening in that data center. So you should always detect and prevent.
Yeah, and I think you make a very sort of strong statement, and you have to sort of prove to, in this case, the board of directors that you get value back. And you mentioned saying if we don't do it, in terms of fines and everything, the business could be non-existent anymore.
Exactly.
Is there a particular way in which you did it? Did you hire an external consultancy firm to do that? How did you prove that to your board?
We always start with our own people first, and after that we go to parties like VMware, EMC, PwC as our house auditor to get them on board on the track that we do with them.
Okay, very, very clear, and I think it's important that you start with your own people. Chris, is there anything that you think in your customers when you talk to them? Is there a single moment when you see them really clicking, yes, we need to make this investment into Palo Alto or NSX or the combination of both?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we've seen into Dharminder's point is that this has kind of changed some of the conversations in the boardroom, right? Especially with the number of breaches and the visibility of those breaches that have happened recently. Security has always been a bit of a challenge from a purchasing perspective, because it's not something that you get revenue from typically. It's typically a cost, and so it's always a little bit of a challenge to justify over time. But the kind of visibility of some of these breaches and the knowledge of, it's generally public knowledge now about things that have happened with some of these pretty significant companies. It's caused a lot of people to rethink about how they do security and what they need to focus on. So even though it's not a profit center, it's something that actually has a physical impact. It has an impact on CEOs being fired. It has an impact on public image. It has a lot of different impacts that people are realizing that even though it's not bringing us extra dollars, it's something critical to actually start looking at. And so that's elevated, CISOs and other people within the organization into the boardroom to have a much deeper discussion and have a more significant role as well.
Yeah, I can vouch for that as well. I think usually every Monday when people open up the newspapers, I see a lot of the things that you refer to, and I think our customers do that as well. And I think very often a moment that clicks is when a business, for example, is being hacked and they're either out of business or a C-level person is fired because of it. I think that's, especially when it's a relating business, maybe in the same vertical, that's when it clicks. Because I think a lot of businesses still think, well, hey, we're not that interesting for a hacker. But even if you're a hospital, you have a lot of valuable information. And we see also hospitals, governments, all of them now really becoming very, well, entrenched with the thought that, yes, security is critical to my business. If you look at the role of sort of software-defined networking in thwarting the big security threats and the big hacks that have occurred in some of the big companies that we've referred to, how do you think software-defined networking, the combination of NSX with Palo Alto, how do you think that can help companies? And I'll give it to you first, Chris.
Yeah, so there's been a pretty consistent challenge that customers have had over a long period of time with security within the network. And that's, how do you insert security services between other services within the network? It's been a challenge pre-virtualization all the way back to the days of just physical platforms. And people did all kinds of funky ways to try to solve this so you could quickly insert services and make changes based on need, right? And none of them worked very well. There were VLANs, people did spanning tree with flat L2 networks, people did all kinds of things that didn't work well. And a lot of companies tried to invent ways to solve that, right? And so it was a challenge back then. It became a massive challenge when you go to virtualization, because now you have the same exact challenge, but much more rapid, much larger scale, with a much larger need for agility. And so a thing that was always a problem became extremely visible now and a huge pain point. And so NSX is exactly the solution that I know myself in the security industry has been looking for 15 years, because we've needed a way to be able to quickly add or remove or change real security services between different systems within the network very rapidly with a lot of flexibility and scale. And that's exactly what we've seen that it solved. And so now you have two different layers of security that you're able to provide within these environments, because there's two problems. One of them is, how do I quickly insert services for security? And then the second one is, how do I have an underlying layer of security which it reduces my attack surface overall, right? And so the first piece is, for the attack surface piece, is using something like distributed firewall with NSX to be able to reduce the communication between these services to segment like we've always done the segmentation within a data center. Then the second piece is to be able to quickly insert Palo Alto networks between these different services and change it based on demand and change it based on what happens within the network, to be able to do true application, content, and user-based protection between these services as well. So it's a perfect kind of 1-2 punch. You have one that completely scales across the entire network, makes your attack surface smaller, and then the other one is Palo Alto Networks Firewall to do real deep security between those different interconnects to protect.
Yeah, very clear, and it also completely matches what our customers are telling us in VMware. And basically, when I speak to my customers, they very often only realize once they start digging into it. The data center itself has changed over time. Obviously, years ago, we used to focus on the exterior protection of a data center, but nowadays, most of the traffic is actually flowing inside the data center. We have virtual desktops sometimes there, which means that users are much closer to the database itself, and that is all fine, but you need to protect for that as well. And nowadays, if a hacker comes in and you don't have lateral security in place, which is what the combination of NSX and Palo Alto obviously enables, hackers are basically free to roam wherever they want. They can collect a lot of data and then push it outside of the boundaries once maybe a security officer is on holiday or there is some type of other downside. So it's critical that we do something about it. And as you mentioned, the distributed firewall, together with the augmented security from Palo Alto, is very, very good in making that change in the data center also a change that is very well to be protected. Dharminder, obviously you've chosen for this combination. What do you think SDN, Palo Alto, NSX, what was the defining choice that made you choose for this combination?
You know, we are for a long time a Palo Alto customer, especially with when the next generation firewall started. But the main thing was we needed an ecosystem where VMware and other stuffs are working seamlessly together. And in that ecosystem, it's Palo Alto Networks, it's VMware with SDDC and NSX, it's Juniper, and that was the part that we realized. Okay, that this ecosystem is so good that it's seamless work together, and it will make our implementation part much easier because Palo Alto knowledge was there, was available, and VMware knowledge was available. So we integrated that knowledge to within our people, and as you know, and maybe later on we can take there a deeper insight in on it. Work change, people change. Where we had siloed security officers, VM administrators, storage guys who were doing the storage part, going to an SDDC platform with security, it integrates all that knowledge to one people almost. That's what is happening now. New jobs are created. You have to be creative because going this way you will have time left for your people to do, and you have to depend on, okay, where can I put them best? The learning curve, you have always a learning curve. You have to adopt it. You have to get into the mindset of SDDC, NSX, and what Palo Alto is doing with VM inspection in the lateral movement. If you are aware that and you have a vision and a strategy on that part, it's so easy to see how these products helps you to take your environment, take your platform to a next security level.
So you mentioned something that's actually critical is the ecosystem of, in this case, Juniper, Palo Alto, NSX. Was that also a deciding factor for you to be able to have an ecosystem and not maybe be tied into a single vendor? How is that openness of the ecosystem important for you as a business?
Yeah, for us as a business, and always from the supervisory board, they want they want not a vendor lock-in. They want be replaceable. VMware should be replaceable for something else. Palo Alto should be replaceable for something else, etc., etc. And that's one of the biggest choices that I think every party on the business has to realize, that you are one of the leaders in SDDC with NSX. Palo Alto is one of the leaders in security company. You have to have always an exit strategy. That is our strategy. If you have an exit strategy, it doesn't matter anymore which ecosystem you are using. But it seamlessly ties together all this VMware stack with Palo Alto, with Juniper, with EMC platform, and that was one of the things that we decided we have to go for this build.
Yeah, and Chris, I think VMware obviously and Palo Alto have opened up this partnership a while back. How critically important do you see it is for your customers to have that openness in partnership?
Yeah, well, certainly we believe from a security perspective the best solution would be Palo Alto Networks to be deployed with NSX. But absolutely, we see the same thing from the security side, right? Where we have an open or a platform that solves many pieces, right, with many different solutions to give customers a lot of variety in what they want to deploy and how they solve the security, because the security is a very complex challenge, right? There's a lot of components, as Dharminder had mentioned, we've gone kind of far from the idea of this kind of hard exterior and soft interior. And so because of that, you need quite a few components: protection on the outside, protection on endpoints, protection for lateral movements with NSX. And so being able to have that kind of capability and all those solutions combined together to give you that holistic, full protection is absolutely critical. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. And I mean, from the VMware point of view, I mean, we can only adhere to that. Obviously, we've created NSX, which is a critical component in a security infrastructure. But we also know that VMware itself is not a security expertise company. So hence we are working very diligently together with Palo Alto, but also Juniper and many other partners to really enable our customers to use best-of-breed solutions wherever they need it. So you mentioned something else that was very interesting, Dharminder, and if I could, I'd like to ask you about it. You mentioned about sort of the changing of people's skills and sort of where you now have the silos of people sitting in a network and the storage and maybe in the server team. You mentioned that sometimes skills have to be combined into maybe a certain person, maybe a single person. Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate a little bit further on that?
Yeah, you know, when we started this this project for the implementation, we had always the discussion. You have now several teams, and how you gotta de-silo them in the case of an SDDC concept. And the biggest challenge was over there to get people in a way, in a thought that your job will not disappear. Because if you are talking about SDDC with NSX, etc., etc., it's always, oh, they're gonna automate everything, so my job will disappear. No, other jobs will come for you, because you have to put a lot of effort in gluing everything together. SDDC integrated with NSX or Palo Alto networks. It's not an out-of-the-box thing yet. You have to glue it together. You have to understand the dots. If you don't understand the dots, you will have a challenge. And when people realize, okay, my job is not at stake at this moment, it's just a bigger challenge for us to adopt the SDDD philosophy and get it working with. The team was then on board. So what we have now is we got 5 guys. We are responsible for the complete platform, the software-defined data center, and they can handle NSX, they can handle VM, they can handle storage, they can handle Palo Alto. So we have now more knowledge as person than it was as teams. So that's the big step forward. Also looking at the personal benefits of our own people is they have more time left to do more, to spend more time on innovation. Because that's what I'm asking from them now is, okay, with automation you will have time left, so put that in innovation.
Yeah, so actually their job becomes more interesting. They have to put out less fires, hopefully. Yeah. And if there is a fire, hopefully it'll be put out automatically. So they can actually do whatever they basically got into the job for, I think, when they first started in IT. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing, taking it a little bit back, what we don't have to forget with NSX is the lateral movement, etc. You have to realize, because always is the discussion, how are we going to fund this? Because it's a big investment. Don't forget, if you are using NSX and you should trade them or see it as a physical firewall device also. Now we have plenty of NSX firewalls. If you have to spend that on physical hardware, on physical firewalls, the business case is very easy to make.
Yeah, I think if you really want to compare apples with apples, and you compare the distributed firewall, which in your case is a couple of thousands of tiny NSX firewalls, it would not be doable with just physical firewalls. We briefly touched on sort of the changing role, and they can spend more time on innovation. What do you think if really the worst happens and you become the attacked company all of a sudden? How would you gain visibility? How would you maintain control of everything that's happened? What would you do there?
You know, intelligence is the key response over there. You have the intelligence. You have to have intelligence in place, and not every company has SIEM solutions, or there are other kind of solutions. So those steps you have to take, and to be in control, you have to know your own platform, you know your own applications, to realize that you are breached, yes or no. That's the first step. After that, you have to, of course, the prevent situation that's gonna detect, and then you have to solve it, restore everything again. So those are steps you have to play it, because you know, as business, you're gonna be hit someday. So we are already busy with those kind of awareness that we're going to be hit. Okay, if we're going to be hit like this, how does this process work? How does this process look like? And eventually, it's very strange to see. It's not the technical part. It's more in the people and process that has to be informed, and how do we communicate these kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think people and process is critical, and maybe it's actually first. Chris, I'll give this the question to you, obviously, because Palo Alto is critical, I think, in maintaining the visibility and maintaining control. But afterwards, I'd like to also take it back to sort of people and process versus technology, and how the difference is in sort of implementing that. So, Dharminder, we'll get back to that later. But first, Chris, what's your visibility on, or what's your opinion on keeping control if the worst really happens?
Yeah, so also I add a little bit to what Dharminder was saying. One of the biggest challenges that we've seen, regardless of virtualization or moving to cloud, was these siloed teams actually were a source for breaches, because you would have information come in each different silo without communication between these different groups, and it actually was causing pretty significant security issues. So there was already a push for more cooperation, maybe breaking down some of those silos and bringing those groups together, even before we started getting into SDN-based deployments. And so now we're getting into these SDN-based deployments. We're getting into NSX-based deployments with with security. And it's even more critical now than it was before. But it's a long-standing issue of breaches happening and then lingering over time, where the data was there, it was visible. You could have stopped it based on correlated data, based on better intelligence, or based on visibility of tools that you didn't have. If you're using kind of more traditional L2, L3 firewalls, and you didn't have the ability to look at application-based data, content coming through. As well, it was an issue. So the more we bring those things together, the more we are able to correlate data, add more intelligence within the network, the better we can stop these breaches and have visibility into them across the whole organization, regardless of what group you're in.
Yeah, and I think that also alludes obviously to not just technology. Very often it is visible in the technology. Is there something that you as Palo Alto Networks do to educate your customers on how to better use that information that's there? Are there workshops, or how do you enable your customers to become better at it?
Absolutely. So we do training. We obviously train the channel as well and make sure everyone's aware of that. We have salespeople which go and discuss it with customers. We do road shows. We do webinars. We have a bunch of different training events that happen to help. It takes a little while for people to switch that mindset from an L2 based deployment to switch to have that true visibility. And so there's a couple steps that they usually go through. And so we help train to go through shifting from that older view without the visibility, going to a more centralized view with correlated data that has much more intelligence in it. And regardless of whether the organization is converged or not, that shift can still happen even within just the SecOps team or just the NetOps team. But it's actually much more secure when it happens as a cross-organizational function where they work together.
Okay. Dharminder, if you look at your organization, obviously you already mentioned that it's not just about technology, but also about the people. Have you really seen a shift in the way that your people work, and how have you made that shift happen in your organization?
We saw that people eventually started to come to their managers and say, I want to follow this course or I want to do this course. They are taking the initiative because they are seeing the technology is there, but you have to make full use of those technology to get really out of the stuff that you have implemented. And that's why there we are helping our own people with those kinds of solutions.
Okay, very good. So if you had to look at sort of one single use case for SDN, what would you think would be the use case, Dharminder? If I start with you, what would be the number one use case for software-defined networking? Would it be security, or is automation, or what type of things do you think are critical?
In our case, it's a mix. It's a mix of getting better secured, and it's also that you can automate your security rollout. And if you tie those two things together, you know, the consumption of time that you have to do for building a network, building the security policy, if you can automate that, and that's what SDDC with InnoSix is delivering, you are saving a lot of time. You know, in our case, where rollouts took 5 days or weeks, we can do rollouts now in 6 minutes, including with the security policies.
Exactly, and so I mean, obviously, we're talking about business now. If you mention a rollout from weeks to minutes,
yeah.
What's the business impact for you guys? I mean, obviously, you're
Yeah.
in a specific vertical,
Yeah.
but what's the business impact for that?
The business impact is huge because, you know, we launch more than 100 websites each year, and we are a marketing-based company.
Exactly.
So we can do now easily 200 if they really want to. So we are a step ahead of the business at this moment with our new infrastructure. And that's nice because we had to catch up with the business, and now we can lay back and say, okay, what do you want? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I hope when SDN kicks off or SDDC kicks off, a lot of companies would see really the big benefits of it.
So you mentioned a very critical thing about becoming a business enabler. Have you seen a change from the board of directors where many of the companies who are not yet shifted into full flexibility, IT is very often seen as a cost center. You clearly mention it as a business enabler. Have you seen that shift in mindset from the board?
Yeah, they now try that even within IT, you can get money back.
Very good.
It's in time. It doesn't have to be always in money. It's in time.
Yeah, and time is critical.
Time is critical. For a marketing company, time is critical because you have to be on the exact moment, exact time to roll out everything and to be prepared.
Yeah, sounds very good. Chris, I'll take the original question back to you. What do you think is the single most important use case for software-defined networking?
Yeah, so it comes down to the scale and agility that we talked to before. So it's not just the scale and agility of the applications, but it's even more so the security insertion, which, like I said, was a long-standing issue, and now can be solved very rapidly. And exactly what Dharminder said, you have business needs where these things have to happen in seconds, right, or minutes. It used to take weeks, right? You'd have to order hardware, you'd have to install these things very slowly. You'd have to worry about, oh no, I set this up, and now if I make a change, I may break everything, right? Which is another major concern. Those things have largely gone away. The other challenge that we talked about before is that I have to now be much more secure than I was before, because now I realize that my kind of the M&M model, where my crunchy exterior and my soft interior doesn't work anymore, right? So how do I be much more secure and agile simultaneously? But the third problem is I can't add more people, right? Typically, a lot of CIOs don't have a budget to add, double the headcount to be able to solve these problems. And so it's take your existing team, take your existing headcount, move 10 times faster, be a lot more secure, and how are you going to solve that? Right. Well, the way to solve it is to be able to have an automated intelligence solution like NSX and Palo Alto Networks.
Very good. Dharminder, if you look at the mindset in specific companies, you've obviously seen the change in your company, but I know you've done a lot of external activities, including speaking at VMworld, for example. What do you think needs to change in the mindset of various companies and boards and business leaders out there for SDN to even have a greater impact and a greater embrace from the business?
You know, what I have saw is companies don't innovate anymore. They are very scared for innovation. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have over here now, because it's a complete different setup. There where we were used to use hardware, and we are now putting all the intelligence in the software layer. And that's the mind shift. And innovation. We have the partners, because companies are not alone. You have the partner, VMware has its partner, Palo Alto has their partners everywhere worldwide. Make use of them and be bold to do this, because it really benefits the business.
I'm just unmuting myself, and I couldn't agree more, Dharminder. I think, especially at VMworld, we've also seen Pat Gelsinger come up on stage and talk about the new paradigm of business, and innovation is critical there. And I think if you look at some of the Fortune 500 companies, who are very large companies, sometimes they are not as agile anymore, and they might be competing with a startup that will start tomorrow, but basically builds their business on a cloud, is very agile, finds a good customer base, and all of a sudden is a competitor of one of those Fortune 500 companies. So I fully agree with you. Agility, innovation is critical. And I think once companies really start embracing that, then they will have no other choice than to also embrace that agility in their IT infrastructure. Chris, if I go to you, what's your vision on that topic? Do you agree with it? Do you have a different vision?
No, I mean, I pretty much agree with Dharminder. The challenge is change, right? We've been doing things a certain way, we've invested in a certain way, and now there's a change, right? And so we have to look at things a little bit differently. We have to make some changes, maybe in the organizational structure to be more efficient. We have to look at moving to a model which makes us be much more agile, and so it takes you know, a little bit of work to make that mental mind shift, and then make that change within the organization as well. Once they do it, exactly to your point, they can be much more agile, they can be much more competitive to new companies. The challenge that you have, and this has been a long-standing challenge, is that when you realize you need it, it's already too late, right? And so exactly to your point, if you have a competitor that's biting at your heels and they have the ability to do these things very rapidly and completely change the way business is done, it's already, you know, too late in some cases. You need to start doing it right away, right? So even before you have that issue where you have a competitive problem, you need to start thinking about how you're going to make that shift.
Yeah, fully agreed. I'll switch over to a final question that we have for you guys, and obviously for the audience out there, if you have any questions, please use your Google Hangout toolset to ask us questions. I think we will have some time to go over a couple of questions at least. But before we switch over to the audience questions, Dharminder, can I please open up with you? Do you think that 2016 will be the year where SDN really takes off?
I hope for you guys it's got a good business. No, you saw it on VMworld in the US and also VMworld in Barcelona. All the business that were over there, they are on the day for taking that decision. Should we go the new school way or should we use the traditional way? And I definitely believe that the 2016 SDN will kick off. And especially because you got more implementations, you got more companies who are using it. It's proven technology now, and you are working hard on your stack. Palo Alto is working hard on their stack. So everybody in the ecosystem is really hard working to get this up and running.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. Chris, if I hand this question over to you, what do you think about 2016 for SDN? Will this be the year where it kicks off?
Yeah, I think this will be a significant year for SDN in general. We've seen, it already start. We've seen some fairly decent deployments that have been happening. There's been pretty consistent development and testing and moving towards it. And from our side, we've seen significant uptake in sales and in deployments. And so absolutely, like we were talking about, the biggest challenge was more organizational, more people-based than technology. And I think that the technology is there. It's been proven to be there and ready, and it's just about the organization starting to move to using it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If I look at it from a VMware perspective, and Dharminder, obviously, thank you for the comment. Obviously, it's a good business, but if you look at VMworld especially, where obviously a lot of announcements have been done by not just VMware but also by the partners, we've also announced that already 900 customers have bought into NSX alone, and if you look at the Palo Alto customer base, it's obviously much larger. So combined, I think customers are really starting to build out this technology and really trust upon it. And they're really seeing now that there's a difference between security built in from the original get-go, and that's also why Palo Alto has obviously become so successful. But now with NSX, also security is really thought about from the start of the development of the solution, and not just an afterthought. It's really built in versus bolted on. And if you look at how our customers are reacting to it, I've seen a massive uptake after people came back from holidays in EMEA. I think many people were watching the announcements at VMworld, and as soon as they came back, I see a lot of projects starting up. And to add to that, I think legislation with the new arrival of data loss, sort of having to basically honor that data loss and inform the authorities if a data loss has happened, is critical also for customers to start really seeing the necessity of embracing this. So for our viewers at home, if there are any questions, now's the time to ask them. And while we wait for questions to come in, Dharminder, obviously you are the one customer that we have on this Hangout. And I know the project that you guys are running, and I know you are officially running in production already. If you think about the collaboration between the companies that you're working with, so Palo Alto, VMware, Juniper, and the whole project, if you look back at the project, what do you think went extremely well for you guys? What will be a tip for the audience? And where do you think maybe you could have done better? Where could the collaboration between all of them have gone better?
As a customer, you have always to understand that you are running this project. So you are at the steering wheel. You will have your hurdles, as we had our hurdles with VMware, with EMC. But what you have to understand from business perspective is you are partners to getting the business to a certain level. So that part went very perfect. What the other part that we could do better is when companies like VMware understand the business where the customer is into. You got your own cloud propositions, your own cloud solutions. Don't try to bring those solutions into the customer, because there's another architecture needed over there, because the customer always knows their applications, their business, and their needs over there. So that's something that we thought that we could do that much better next time, if we're gonna do such a big project again.
Well, I think you're still smiling, so something must have gone right.
No.
If there's one tip where you say, hey, this really made the difference for us, where this project became a success.
Yeah.
As you said, I think there were some hurdles. I think as a partner, we really overcame them quite well. But what was sort of the cement in all of this? Where do you think the success came from?
The success came from a few things. The team effort. Everybody was willing to go for it. So that's very important in these kind of big projects. The second thing was, don't compromise. and we always kept the focus. Focus, focus, focus. And those were the success criteria in our case, because our board of directors were really surprised that we did this project in time and in budget. Usually, this kind of innovation project fails the first time, and then you start up again.
Yeah, and you mentioned in time and in budget. Let's not talk about budget because that's obviously a very personal thing.
Yep.
But can you talk a little bit about the time it took, but also maybe before you mention the time, also sketch a little bit about how big this project was?
Yes, when we started the investigation network virtualization when the Zero was there over there. So we were really busy with it, and in totally. To get this 4 data centers, software-defined data centers integrated with NSA, get it up and working. We sometimes we had 80 people working, starting, and the biggest thing was that we divided the project in 3 phases. The first phase was the readiness of the data centers itself and the architecture part. That was the most hardest part. We have more than 1,000 pages of documentation, or architecture documentation. The second phase is, okay, when it's over there, what you're gonna automate and orchestrate. And when you have those 2 kinds of stuff in place, then the migration is very easy. So overall, it took from starting last year, September, and we went live with Sweden in March, April, and then the UK in June, and the Dutch part in September.
Very good. So clearly, I mean, 4 data centers basically building up from scratch,
yeah.
And having them run within a year, basically. So that's a tremendous achievement. I haven't seen any questions come in from the audience. So Chris, I'll go to you first. If you have any closing comments, and then we'll close off after we've all done our closing comments. Chris, the floor is all yours.
Sure. So I would just say that this has been a great partnership between Palo Alto Networks and VMware with NSX. It started a couple years ago, and we've seen a tremendous number of changes on both sides since then, with the investment on Palo Alto Networks side, as well as the investment on VMware side, to see it grow to the point where it's matured to the level that it is with the integration that we have, and even outside of NSX with AirWatch and the other integrations that we've done, the growth we've put into Palo Alto Networks. So this is just the beginning, I think. I think we have a lot of opportunity going forward. I definitely see this as being, the year that this starts to really take off, and so I look forward to kind of developing this and improving it over time as well, based on customer needs, and seeing this really take off as a solution that people use as the main deployment that they have for their data centers.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chris. Didi, any final closing comments from you? You're still on mute.
Thanks to companies like VMware and Palo Alto Networks and EMC, Juniper, you call it Cisco, you name it. We as customer now are able to keep up with the business and beat the business. So that's very interesting to see how companies like you guys are innovating and what you can deliver to the world, and that's why we are really happy with that ecosystem, and that's going really well. And this is the beginning. But if we see how much you can automate and where SDDC is bringing you, this is the start.
Perfect. Yeah, I can only vouch for that as well. And I think one of the things that both Dharminder and Chris have said time and time again is I think it's all about a partnership. And I think that innovation comes through partnership. It's all about obviously companies like Palo Alto and VMware bringing innovation, but also the feedback from companies like Novamedia on what are our solutions bringing, where are maybe some gaps which could be built out further. Those type of feedback is critical. And I think if you look at sort of the SDN movement over the last 2 years, huge leaps have been made. Partnerships have become much more integrated, and I think customers are reaping the benefits of that now. And I think especially with now governments seeing that and legislation being adapted, I think 2016 will be a very, very big year for SDN and security, and really allowing customers to continue being agile and flexible while still protecting their investments in an adequate way. So thank you, Dharminder Dharminder, for your time on this Friday and all of the partnership that we've obviously had during this work together. Chris, thank you very much for sacrificing some of your Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you will have a great weekend and enjoy some of the family time. And to all of our viewers, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of your contacts in either VMware or Palo Alto. And if you know Novamedia, obviously you can try and reach out to them as well. And you can always get in touch with them through either of us. Thank you all and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.